The kitchen was colder than usual that morning, and it wasn't just the weather. Jasmine stood by the small window, barely awake, when something caught her eye inside a drawer she never opens. It was the one Gino always called junk, the one he gently pushed shut every time she went near it. For some reason, her hand moved to it now. Inside, one envelope stood out like it was waiting to be found. Heavy paper, government seal. Her name printed twice, once with authority, once with caution. She didn't move, didn't blink. Her breath slowed. The word beneficiary appeared right above another line, labeling her as a potential immigration risk. 2 lines, 1 life. It didn't feel like a typo. Every detail was too clean for that. She read the letter once, then again. Dates, deadlines, clipped phrases in legal tone. The silence in the room shifted. Even the fridge's hum seemed to pause. Gino walked in with his usual morning coffee routine and froze mid-step. Eyes on the open drawer, the letter in her hand. He recovered fast. Too fast. Old paperwork. I forgot. It means nothing, he said, moving like he could smother years of trust between 2 sips of coffee. But Jasmine didn't flinch. No yelling. No half-choked sobs. She placed the letter flat on the counter and calmly asked him to read the date aloud. His voice cracked on the month. Quieter on the day. By the time he reached the year, he was nearly whispering. Jasmine didn't need to say anything. Silence was finally on her side. Her face gave nothing away. Not fear. Not rage. Just a stare Gino couldn't read anymore. He shifted his weight, tried to smile. She didn't move. He filled the gap with speed. Lawyers panic. Mail moves slow. Systems are broken. He meant to fix it. But she wasn't looking at the letter anymore. She was watching him. Every blink, every hesitation, every time his words bent just a little too comfortably around. Lies. Not the first time he kept something from her. But this wasn't forgetting date night or hiding credit card charges. This was her name, her right to stay, her life choices, filed silently in a drawer next to expired coupons and batteries that probably never worked. She asked when it arrived. The pause after her question said more than his answer. A while ago, he mumbled, avoiding her eyes. That's when she understood. This letter wasn't meant to be found. Not by her. Not like this. She picked up her phone off the counter without comment, turned its screen down. She'd never felt so exposed in her own home. He said he was scared, that she'd leave once things felt secure. He said he didn't want her to feel unstable, but his choices already made that decision for her. And now, she needed to know the real question. If this letter came weeks ago, what else had been sitting in the shadows? The second Gino realized the conversation wasn't going his way, he switched modes. Fast. Panic in a polo shirt. Lawyers blow things out of proportion, he said. There's nothing to worry about. Then he pivoted. It slipped my mind. Another pivot. It's old. Then I was going to take care of it. His tone sped up while his eyes darted left to right, calculating how fast he could bury the truth underneath layers of gentle gaslighting. But Jasmine? She didn't interrupt. She didn't cry. She wasn't clinging to his words for clarity. She already had it. Her silence wasn't resignation. It was observation. She let him trip over his own timelines, contradict himself mid-sentence, and stack apologies on top of alibis. Not for fun. For proof. This wasn't about getting a confession on camera. This was about opening her eyes to what had already been right under her nose. Without looking him in the eye, she slowly turned her phone face up. No explanation, no theater. She tapped the record button and slid it back across the counter. Casual. Not to hurt him. To protect herself. Gino didn't even notice. He kept talking, filling silence because he was scared of what it said. She kept her voice low, measured, asked specific things. Did you open this letter? Did you respond to it? Did you tell anyone? He rubbed his face. I panicked, he said. I figured I'd deal with it later. I didn't want to ruin the holidays. Pause. I was afraid you'd overreact. Every sentence screamed ego in the name of love. Control, gift wrapped in concern. While she smiled for family photos, learned a new language, adjusted to a new country, this letter was buried in a drawer. It had a deadline. It had terms. It had implications. And he let it sit there, day after day, while he hugged her from behind and whispered safety into her ear. When she asked him what the letter actually said, he stumbled, then guessed, then got defensive. That was the tell. He hadn't reread it in a while. Maybe not at all. Or maybe he knew too well what it said and hoped if he ignored it long enough, the problem would self-destruct. But Jasmine had already clocked the game. Delay. Deflect. Downplay. Repeat. And it wasn't the first time she'd seen it. But this wasn't some throwaway apology needed after a bad comment or passive-aggressive jab. This was federal. What Jasmine doesn't say here speaks louder than anything else. She wasn't begging for answers. She was building a case. Watching him squirm wasn't about revenge. It was how she finally realized she wasn't crazy. He really had chosen silence over honesty. And he didn't even flinch when he did it. The courtroom wasn't dramatic. No music, no gasps. Just dull lighting, the buzz of old air vents, and the rustle of folders that carried consequences. Jasmine sat with her hands folded over the same envelope that cracked everything open. A judge looked at her name like it was part of a puzzle. Across the aisle, Gino fidgeted. No matching outfits, no holding hands, no calm couple image for the cameras, just space. And tension. His lawyer stood up first, polished and rehearsed. He spoke about stress, cultural adjustments, misunderstandings. He reached into the usual playbook, claimed Gino's silence was fear, not manipulation. That slipping a deadline was just human error, not dishonesty. Then came the twist. He started referencing moments from the show. Raised voices. Tears. Jasmine's raw emotion, rebranded now as instability. Jasmine didn't blink. But inside, something flared. Her pain was being edited again, only this time not by a TV producer, but by a legal defense strategy. What hurt her before was now being used against her. Not his choices, hers. Not his silence, her reactions. He wasn't denying that he kept the letter hidden. He was saying she couldn't be trusted with it. She looked at Gino. He didn't speak up, didn't stop it, didn't clarify. His silence screamed complicity. When it was finally his turn to talk, Gino stood stiff, no longer slick. His voice cracked on the second sentence. He said he was scared. Scared of losing her. Scared the letter would make her feel unsafe and run. He framed his lie like romance, stretching the word protection until it snapped in half. He admitted he responded to the government's notice alone. Said he needed time. Said he thought he could fix it before telling her. That the risk felt smaller than the confrontation. But the more he talked, the less made sense. His dates blurred. His logic stumbled. His reasoning was allergic to specifics. And behind all those words, the truth started to leak through. The hide, the hope, the delay, the control. Yet, Jasmine knew they weren't even at the worst part yet. Not for her, and not for him. Because inside her folder was a paper he never expected her to see. A page that wasn't about missed emails or excuses sent in the dark. It was about what had happened after the first letter, the part he still hadn't mentioned. The judge wrote something on the file and turned the page. Gino swallowed hard. His story was slipping out of his hands. And Jasmine hadn't even opened the second document. The judge asked a simple question. Was the applicant present at the scheduled interview? The clerk tapped the keyboard, sharp clicks that cut through the stale air. Then came the answer Jasmine wasn't ready for, but somehow already braced to hear. No. Missed. No reschedule on record. She blinked. Interview? What interview? Her eyes shot to Gino. He didn't move. didn't flinch. Almost like he was prepared for this moment to resurface. That's when it clicked. He knew. There'd been an interview scheduled with Ussies. She never saw the notice. Never even knew a date existed. And there was no sign that he asked for it to be rescheduled either. No forwarding, no deferment, nothing. It expired like spoiled milk in a sealed fridge, silent and irreversible. The judge asked about a second notice. The clerk nodded slowly, pulled up the entry. Stronger wording this time. Clear warning. Escalated tone. Sent to the exact same address, same name, same mailbox, same drawer. Jasmine's stomach turned. She realized this wasn't going to be saved by emotion or vows or tears. This wasn't a one-off dropped ball. This was a habit, a system, a slow erosion of her say in her own life. 2 letters, 2 interviews, 0 disclosure. Gino broke his silence, and it made everything worse. I didn't want her to worry, he said, but there was no conviction in his voice anymore. None of the frantic charm, the fast defenses, just collapse. He didn't even defend not telling her about the second letter. He said time got away from him. He said he was overwhelmed. He said the deadlines felt unreal. But missed deadlines have real outcomes. And Jasmine? She'd crossed a blurry line between confusion and clarity now. This wasn't bad communication. This wasn't anxiety. This was something coordinated. Not by an evil mastermind, but by someone who thought silence gave him control. She didn't say anything in that moment. Didn't need to. Her face was calm. Not numb, certain. The version of her that doubted her own reactions was gone, replaced by the woman who now understood what leverage looks like when it shows up smiling. This was never about panic. This wasn't him trying to protect her future. When fear becomes a pattern, it's called a strategy. And Gino didn't just keep the letter away from her. He kept the choice. The court saw it now. The paper trail didn't lie. His love letter to stability had come in the form of sealed envelopes and silent clocks ticking past expiration. There was no reversing that. And for Jasmine, there was no going back to believing this was an accident. The moment they stepped outside that courthouse, Gino tried to reset the scene. As if the folder in Jasmine's hand wasn't loaded with evidence. As if the missed interview was just a scheduling error. As if airing it all under oath didn't strip the varnish off every excuse he'd rehearsed. He said, "Let's work through this together." She said nothing. Her silence wasn't cruel. It was clarity in action. That night, while Gino paced in circles trying to rehearse his next apology, Jasmine was on the phone with someone whose voice didn't tremble. A real immigration attorney. Not a friend of a friend. Not someone Gino picked. Someone with no stake in anyone's ego. She gave her full name, spelled out letter by letter, and opened the folder. Not to fight. To move forward. Protective statement. Legal boundaries. A record that said, I didn't hide these letters. I didn't miss that interview. I didn't stay silent. That wasn't my choice. Meanwhile, inside the house, the camera started up again. Mic checks. Casual questions from a producer. They smiled stiffly. Gino said everything was good. Jasmine let him carry that illusion as long as he wanted. But the camera didn't miss the shift. The eye rolls that never landed. The way her body angled away. She wasn't giving mistrust. She was done giving energy to the performance. In private, he begged for unity. Said lawyers create drama. Said outside people don't understand their bond. That timing was bad. That it could still be fixed. But unity doesn't mean silence. Marriage doesn't mean ownership. And paperwork doesn't fix trust that's already burned out under low light and high pressure. What Gino hadn't realized yet was that the cameras weren't just watching. The crew had ears. The whispers started trading hands. It wasn't just rumors anymore. Word got back to the producer. Someone missed a federal interview. Someone's record got flagged. Someone's emails raised questions. Nobody needed the full picture to know. It wasn't a good one. But Jasmine didn't rush to speak. That was the difference now. She was playing chess, not checkers. Every word calculated, every movement deliberate. She was done trying to keep the drama off screen. Gino had already done enough damage in silence. He asked her if the truth was going public. She looked at him and waited. Not answering wasn't avoiding, it was preparation. Because now there were two stories happening side by side. The one filmed, and the one that could cost her everything. And the next move depended on one thing. How much of the truth she was finally ready to say with a mic on. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Gino had stepped out for errands, maybe coffee, maybe rehearsing his next version of events in the mirror. Jasmine didn't snoop, she never had to. But when she walked past the office and spotted a folder open on his desk, with her name at the top of a page, something inside her stilled. A printed document. Title clean, margins tight. Words chosen carefully like they were meant to be heard by someone unfamiliar. Someone official. At first, the sentences seemed cold, generic, but once she reached the second paragraph, her stomach turned. Emotional distress exhibited on camera. Difficulty regulating reactions. Unpredictable behavior that often escalated tension at home. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a love letter. It was a carefully framed piece of damage control. A statement. Written ahead of time. By Gino. About her. For court or worse, for immigration. Jasmine didn't lose her breath. Didn't throw anything. She pulled out her phone, snapped a photo, and slid it back exactly where he left it. She knew that if she confronted him now, it would all get washed in emotion. She didn't want panic. She wanted proof. He was preparing an exit file, and she hadn't even packed a suitcase. When he returned later, and finally noticed the shift in her voice, she asked him calmly, "Did you write something about me?" He blinked, feigned confusion, then exhaled almost in relief, like secrecy had been too heavy to carry alone. "I just didn't know what could happen. I needed to be safe too." He called it self-protection. She called it building a case behind her back. It wasn't the document that stung the most. It was the timeline. He'd written that paper before she confronted him about the letter. Before court. While hugging her good morning, while cooking dinner side by side, while telling her things would be okay, he was calculating how to make her look like the liability if things fell apart. She didn't cry. Not for this. Not anymore. That moment was like watching a movie finally switch genres. This wasn't love with problems. This was a quiet strategy disguised as nervous affection. He hadn't written that draft to prepare for chaos. He wrote it to script it in his favor. She sat with the photo on her phone for hours before placing a copy with the rest of her legal documents. Not dramatic, just methodical. Because now it wasn't just court catching up. She finally saw the script he was writing. She just wasn't in it. And if Gino wanted her framed as the unpredictable one, he was about to find out what it looks like when the calm one speaks first. In the final hearing, the air felt heavier. Not from nerves, but from knowing too much had already happened to be undone. Jasmine sat with her folder pressed against her lap. Each document inside logged, labeled, and ready. The silent conversations, the lies dressed up as forgetting, the softly delivered manipulations, they were all about to be translated into fact. The judge asked if she had anything further to submit. She nodded once. Calm. Clear. She presented the audio recording first. Gino's own voice, admitting he knew about the letter, brushing off deadlines, minimizing it all like a missing grocery list. No raised voices in the clip, just soft deflection. Which somehow sounded worse. Because it showed that even in private, with no pressure, he chose to keep truth out of reach. Then, the text message. A short note to a friend sent the same night Gino had emailed immigration. Jasmine wrote that she was going to bed early, that Gino was up late on his laptop again. The timestamp matched the email logs now submitted into evidence. The missing interview. The second notice. The written draft. The judge shuffled through the pages without flinching. But everyone in the room felt the shift. Gino's version of events couldn't walk upright anymore. It limped, bloated with contradictions and documented silence. And when asked if he disputed anything, timestamps, logs, the second notice, Gino didn't raise his eyes. He didn't say no. He said nothing. That silence, once his shield, was now his undoing. Jasmine stood when asked to respond. No nerves, no tremble. Her voice didn't rise. It sharpened. She didn't tell the court how afraid she was back then. She told them how many choices were made for her. She didn't label him evil. She laid out each step where a decision was made in private that cost her options in public. It wasn't performance. It was clarity. The judge wrote slowly, pen scratching steady across paper. His words were measured. A pattern of omission. Decisions conducted outside mutual agreement. Credibility compromised. Then the orders, all future legal correspondence to be sent directly to her. Independent legal representation. Option to file a protective statement on record. Jasmine nodded. Not victorious. Grounded. And Gino? He shrank, not from judgment, from exposure. The version of himself he tried to protect with layers of quiet manipulation had just been erased by receipts. The court gave her legal protection. But no paperwork guarantees emotional distance. No folder can force her feet to walk. She gathered her documents, placed the interview notice on top, and stood. Her hands were steady. The court could separate their rights. But only she could separate her life. And the only question left was whether she finally would. The kitchen looked exactly the same. Same light hitting the counter. Same mug left by the sink. But Jasmine's folder was now the most honest object in the room. It sat on the table like a witness. Inside, nothing emotional. Just paperwork that told the truth clearer than Gino ever did. He stood near the doorway. Smaller, somehow. Not physically, but in presence. He asked her how she felt. Like that was a safe topic. Like that was all there was left. His tone was soft, eyes glassy, hands wringing, a little too rehearsed. He talked about how regret had been eating him. How fear made him do things he couldn't explain. How none of it was meant to hurt her. She didn't call it out. Didn't argue. She simply picked up the letter that started everything, smoothed its already flattened edges, and slid it back into the folder without a sound. That quiet said more than any explosion could. Because Jasmine had learned something in that courtroom. You don't need volume when you have evidence. Gino kept going, said he never wanted to lose her, said love made people act irrational. He wrapped his pleas in past tense, like he already knew what was coming before she said a word. But she did speak. Once. Just once. This ends with my silence. Not a threat. A declaration. Not for drama. For closure. Because the woman standing in front of him, calm, precise, done, wasn't waiting for answers anymore. She wasn't going to live in a home where she had to second-guess drawers or depend on her husband's memory to access reality. She picked up a small overnight bag she'd packed the night before. Not rushed. Not emotional. Practical. Charges, documents, keys. No theatrics. Because leaving wasn't about hurting him. It was about choosing her. He asked where she was going. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. He reached out half-heartedly, and she didn't pull away fast. She pulled away slowly, deliberate, like she was finally unstitching herself from the version of him she stayed loyal to too long. She didn't take the photos off the wall, didn't shred the past. Her silence wasn't about erasing him. It was about exiting, without leaving pieces of herself behind. She walked out the front door into cold air that hit her skin like a truth she could finally trust. No paperwork in hiding, no deadlines slipping by while someone else looked guilt-free. This wasn't her breaking point. This was her start line. And inside, the house stayed still. Gino sat where she left him, staring at a folder that he never thought she'd take into her own hands. That folder used to be a hidden weight. Now it was her armor. Everything had been said. The question now wasn't if she'd come back. It was why she ever had to live like that in the first place. The room felt lighter without needing to be loud. For the first time in months, Jasmine wasn't watching what she said. Gino's silence had finally run out of places to hide, and so had he. Whatever came next, she wasn't waiting to be told. She was the one holding the mic now, not the editors, not the showrunners, and definitely not the man who once chose control over partnership. Back in her space, she opened her journal. No fluff, no monologue. Just 5 words pressed into the page like a contract with herself. Never trade truth for comfort. And that was it. Because while Gino scrambled to salvage his image, Jasmine had something better. A future that didn't depend on someone else's secrets. But what about her immigration case now? Is the damage fixable or permanent? And here's the real twist. How much did the producers know while filming this? And when exactly did they find out? Trust me, you'll want to see what's coming next.